Hi everyone, my name is Apuraj Garikapati. Welcome to my YouTube channel Amazing Abhay.
Don't just hear the story, enter it.
That it looks good on him and tells him to wear it. Kalli, however, feels too preoccupied to focus on such matters. The wedding date is set and letters are sent to various nobles. On the wedding day, nobles arrive at a guest's territory, each with their own agenda. People discuss Kalli's character, some calling him great, while others remember his past as a slave fighter. Count Joseph, who dislikes our guy, arrives and greets Azealia. He says it has been a while and asks if he can call her a baroness now. Azealia, who is now frustrated, questions his presence, but he insists that they share a bond. But she is now keeping her composure, says that she hopes he enjoys his time here, all the while thinking that if she kicks him out, bad rumors will spread. Meanwhile, Joseph, harboring ill intentions, thinks that the woman who insulted him in the slave is having a wedding, so he could not possibly miss it. Joseph begins greeting the guests while Lorvan Karina stands at a distance, calling the others pathetic fools for groveling to the man who was beaten for attempting something terrible to Azealia. He wonders if a particular feels no shame to acquaintance with Joseph, even in front of his daughter. Just then, the same noble approaches Lorvan to introduce him to his daughter. Lorvan excuses himself and leaves. He heads to Kalli's room and knocks the door. Inside, Kalli is struggling with his dress, complaining that the collar feels too tight. Lorvan enters and Kalli greets him, first taking his false name, but then greeting him as Lorvan from Corin. They greet each other warmly. Lorvan remarks that he predicted Kalli would not remain a slave, but admits he did not expect him to become a noble. He informs Kalli that his name is currently the most talked about among the nobles. Kalli responds that it explains why his ears have been itching. Lorvan continues, saying that while some of the talk is good, most of it is negative. He explains that Count Joseph has laid significant groundwork in central politics, gaining many followers. He adds that Joseph's daughter recently became a princess, giving their family the royal family's backing. This could pose a challenge for Kalli. Hearing this, Kalli asks if he should now be careful with the people around him. Lorvan, smiling, says that he has taken enough of the groom's time and leaves. Lorvan reflects on how pugilism is now a popular form of entertainment, comparable to the heyday of gladiatorial combat. Step by step, Kalli has risen from a slave to a noble, gaining influence over the public's mind. This makes Lorvan feel that Kalli has nothing to worry about. The wedding ceremony proceeds. The priest asks if the groom swears to care for the bride forever. Kalli answers that he swears, still in disbelief that he is really getting married. Lady Azealia looks happy and beautiful. The priest continues, saying that he will send a part of both their souls to the goddess, uniting them forever. Music plays as the ceremony concludes, and everyone congratulates the baron and baroness. A lady teases Kalli while saying that many young men must be heartbroken to see him with such a beautiful wife. At that, Joseph approaches Kalli to congratulate him sarcastically, commenting that he must have good financial resources to host such an extravagant wedding. Kalli retorts, asking if Joseph cares so much about finances. Joseph replies that he does and shows Kalli an agreement, explaining that a guest owes his family a significant debt. He admits it was rude to come without an invitation, but says he urgently needs 100,000 guild from Kalli. This angers Kalli, but before he can respond, Count Boromarl arrives and asks if the wedding is already over. The guests whisper about Boromarl, wondering how he lost one of his hands and what his connection to the kingdom is. Boromarl remarks to Kalli that it is his wedding, but feels more like a funeral due to the gloomy atmosphere. Kalli welcomes him, but Boromarl notices Joseph and recognizes him. Joseph is shocked, wondering why one of the kingdom's wealthiest nobles is here. Boromarl's reputation precedes him, as even after losing his arm, he has built an empire through trade and has the wealth to attract many followers. If he enters politics, Boromarl notices the agreement in Joseph's hands and asks about it, saying it does not look like a wedding gift. Joseph, sweating, explains that he urgently needs to collect money from a guest. Boromarl remarks on Joseph's lack of manners, saying a wedding should be a time of celebration, not debt collection. Joseph angrily insists that he must receive the money immediately, and warns Boromarl to be careful with his words. Boromarl asks how much is owed and Joseph names the amount. He assumes Boromarl would not part with such a large sum easily. To everyone's surprise, Boromarl places a box full of guilds in front of Kalli, explaining that he thought Kalli urgently needed funds and brought 500,000 guilds. Joseph is left in shock at the terrifying wealth of the Boromarl family. Kalli, equally shocked, wonders why Boromarl brought so much when he only asked for 200,000 guilds. Kalli assures Joseph that he will prepare the payment by tomorrow and suggests they discuss it further then. Joseph, disbelieving and frustrated, leaves. Kalli later asks Boromarl about the 500,000 guilds and Boromarl brushes it off, saying it is no big deal if it is for Kalli. Boromarl then meets Azalea, who asks Kalli how they know each other and scolds him for not telling her earlier. Kalli says that it is a long story. Boromarl laughs and tells Kalli that it is his story to tell and asks where he plans to begin. Boromarl tells the crowd that he cut the rope with his teeth while exhausted, and Kalli handled the monster. When people ask about the monster, Kalli wonders how anyone would believe the story, especially after seeing the monstrous monkey in person. He continues, recounting how severe his injuries were and how he thought it might be the end for him. Kalli interrupts, telling him that he is drunk. Boromarl realizes that he has said too much and refrains from talking about the empire further. Kalli notes that even being close to Count Boromarl attracts nobles and any involvement with the empire would only complicate matters. Later, our guy gives Azalea a ruby necklace while saying he had been trying to give it to her, but could not find the right moment. She loves the gift and learns it was crafted by Arzan's master, artisan Quill. Azalea already knows about Quill, the most famous artisan, and tells Kalli she sold all her jewelry except for his mother's belongings. She thanks him for the thoughtful gift. The next day, Joseph leaves a jest after drinking all night. As he departs, Kalli feels relieved, thinking that he no longer has to worry about Joseph. Jethro approaches Kalli and asks if he slept well. Bowing respectfully, Jethro declares his loyalty to the Baron. Kalli stops him, saying that it feels burdensome, but Jethro insists. Our guy realizes Jethro's loyalty is not truly towards him, but towards the 400,000 guilds he received. However, our honors his promise to give Jethro a large amount of money. Joseph had carefully budgeted enough to survive the winter, but despite the massive sum of 400,000 guilds, they could only partially pay off their debt. Aegis, with its mountainous and barren lands, relies heavily on its pugilism training academy for income rather than serfs and manors. However, a significant number of ace pugilists had left. Kalli concludes that if they paid off all their debt with the 400,000 guilds, they would be unable to bear the financial burden. Meanwhile, Jethro, walking through the mountains, gets the idea to make a raspberry drink can make them rich. Back at the estate, Kalli watches his baby and finds the child fascinating every time he sees them. Azalea shows Kalli a letter from the kingdom, announcing a pugilism competition in celebration of the crown prince's wedding and his 17th naming day. The news leaves Kalli confused. Azalea clasps her hands and tells him that she would prefer he rests for another year or two, but she knows he will go anyway. Kalli confirms her assumption while saying that he will leave after winter. After that, our guy begins training for the competition. While running, Kijo taunts him about trying to move faster, but apologizes when he realizes it is Kalli. During practice, Kalli punches a wooden post, and Nixar stops him while warning that they are already short on supplies and cannot afford to smash anything. Nixar appoints Kijo as an instructor. Before we move ahead, please take a second to like on this video. A like tells me that you enjoyed this topic. Your support helps Amazing Pie grow naturally. Who admits that he did not realize instructing would be so difficult? Nixar replies that work is never easy, remarking on Kalli's remarkable journey from a limping slave to a noble and from the least trusted one to an instructor. He feels grateful that Kalli came back alive. Our guy continues his rigorous training, honing his body. By the time spring arrives, his physique has undergone a complete transformation, tempered and perfected like a sharp blade. Finally, he prepares to leave for the competition on horseback. Azalea asks if he is sure he does not need guards. Kalli replies that he will go alone. She sighs, saying he always keeps her worried to the very end. Calling his name, she adds that he understands her feelings without her having to say them aloud. Kalli smiles and departs for the competition. 2 days after leaving a jest, our guy hears a voice calling for help. He notices a man who is tied with ropes surrounded by others holding swords. Looking at our guy, one of them steps forward and speaks of sparing his life if he hands over everything he has. Our guy hesitates, his face showing nervousness. He observes their tattered armor, makeshift weapons and farming tools modified for combat. They appear to be struggling serfs, likely runaways who are facing financial hardships. The leader repeats his demand and makes it clear he isn't joking. Slowly, our guy draws his weapon and questions the man, asking what would happen if he refused. Another one in the group remarks confidently that there is nothing to fear since it's only one man against them. Instead of attacking, our guy plants his sword into the ground, causing confusion among the group. The leader questions his actions, only to receive a sudden punch to the face. This enrages the others and they shout about killing him. They attack in unison, but their strikes miss as our guy swiftly dodges and counters with punches. Within moments, all 4 attackers are on the ground, groaning in pain. Turning his attention to the tied man, our guy asks if he is all right. As he takes a closer look, he recognizes him as Baron Kalli of a jest. Curious, our guy asks if they have met before. The tied man acknowledges that he had expected to be forgotten and introduces himself as Began Boromarl. This name sparks a memory in our guy as he recalls Began as the nephew who had once tried to kill Count Boromarl. Without hesitation, our guy points his sword at Began's throat and questions him about his presence, asking if he is seeking revenge. Began denies this while explaining that he is there under the Count's orders to deliver a letter, but was ambushed by bandits. Our guy examines the letter, which begins warmly from the Count and mentions Began. The letter explains that Began had been imprisoned in the past, but was being given a second chance. The Count requested that Cal use Began as a squire and work him hard. But if he proved useless, Cal was free to kill him. The letter further stated that if Began improved and straightened himself out, he should be sent back. However, the Count warned that if Began was returned, Cal would owe 500,000 guild. The word squire surprises our guy as he prefers working alone. Still, he tells Began that he will keep an eye on him due to the Count's request and warns of breaking his limb and leaving him behind if he misbehaves. Began accepts this and asks to have his ropes loosened. Later that night, Began prepares the meal for our guy while he observes his politeness. He notes that Began is more useful than expected, particularly impressed with his cooking skills. Began explains that this was why his uncle never expected betrayal from him. This prompts our guy to remark on how unworthy it is to boast about such things. Began, in a moment of reflection, shares that he once asked his uncle to punish him by cutting off his arm, but the Count chose to treat him instead. This act of mercy made him reflect on his life. The honesty and Began's confession puzzles our guy, who wonders how much people can truly change. Despite these thoughts, Began proves to be a diligent squire, even setting up a place for Kalli to sleep. During their journey to Drigo's gates, Kalli decides to teach him pugilism to pass the time. As the lessons continue, the two grow closer, and when they arrive at the gates, Began points out the beautiful streets of Wings of the Dragon. He mentions that most nobles live there and suggests heading to a nearby mansion once used by our guy's predecessors. Their progress is interrupted when a tomato is thrown, splattering onto Began's head. A man from a nearby group shouts at Began, questioning how he dares to return to the area. The group mocks Began, calling him a disgrace and demanding he leave the district. The crowd recognizes Kalli and addresses him, confirming his identity as Baron Kalli of a jest. They complain about Began's presence, calling it an insult to their district. Kalli remarks that the treatment seems harsh, given that the Count has already forgiven Began. He speaks of being entrusted with Began's reform, adding that if anyone wishes to question Began's crimes, they would need to go through him. Began is stunned by this defense, and the man warns our guy that associating with Began will bring him trouble. At the mansion, Began advises our guy not to involve himself in such matters, suggesting that siding with someone like him would only create unnecessary enemies. He dismisses this, stating that he is not there to win the noble's favor, but to compete in the tournament. Reflecting on his own past, our guy thinks about the second chance he had received. He considers that if Began is truly remorseful, he might be the one to guide him toward a better path. Began, overcome with emotion, begins to cry. Meanwhile, the butler arrives and is instructed to provide the best room for the two travelers, marking a shift in their journey. He looks at the pile of invitations spread across the table and asks about them. Began explains that these are invitations to various banquets and balls. He glances through them and admits that he does not recognize most of the names. Began reassures him that many nobles are favorable toward him, and declining their invitations could be taken as a serious insult. Our guy is frustrated that all he wants is to participate in the tournament, yet these nobles continue to bother him. Began suggests that they should at least consider attending some events since there is still a month left before the tournament. He immediately dismisses the idea, saying that it is impossible to attend them all unless he has several bodies. Began then advises him to choose the most powerful family. Thinking for a moment, our guy decides that visiting one of the great duchies of the kingdom might be the best option. Began mentions that they have also received an invitation from Duke Wistry, but he disagrees, explaining that the most influential family in the capital is the Eldrin family. Curious, Kalli asks how a mere marquis family holds such influence. Began elaborates that the head of the family, Angelson Eldrin, led the royal guards and suppressed the gladiator rebellion over 20 years ago. Though he only holds an honorary title and lacks actual territory, his warrior family wields absolute power. There are even rumors that he controls the royal guards and essentially uses them as his personal army. Listening to this, he compares it to a division commander treating his drivers as personal servants, and asks what else is unique about the family. Blushing slightly, Began mentions that the daughter of Marquis is incredibly beautiful. Without hesitation, our guy punches Began, reminding him that he is already married. Began groans on the floor with his swollen head. Upon arriving at the Eldrin mansion, he pauses to observe the architecture and comments that it looks imperial. The subordinate confirms his keen eye, explaining that an engineer from the Empire was hired for its construction. As they proceed inside, they are welcomed by the Marquis himself, who expresses his honor that he accepted the invitation. The Marquis is then proudly announces that he has arranged for the royal head chef to prepare their meal. Confused, our guy wonders if the Marquis is boasting about such matters to display his influence. Meanwhile, the Marquis himself is taken aback by Began's presence, internally questioning why a dirty man like him was allowed into the mansion. If he were not Baron a justice companion, he would not have tolerated it. The meal is served and he enjoys it, while sincerely telling the Marquis that it tastes excellent. The Marquis then requests a light conversation and states that he has a question for him. He finds it amusing how nobles always have something to ask. The Marquis explains that, unlike most nobles, he admires him because he is a warrior who understands power. Coming from a warrior family himself, he has faced discrimination among nobles who merely inherit their titles, but lack the strength to protect themselves. He admits that dealing with such nobles has always been troublesome. Our boy responds that if such nobles were the first to go to war, it would be quite a problem. The Marquis chuckles and says he is starting to like him even more, while adding that if he were not already married, he would have considered marrying him to his daughter. Before we move ahead, please take a second to share on this video. Sharing helps this video reach friends who may also enjoy anime, gaming, travel, cricket, chess, career basics, or personal stories. Your support helps amazing Abhai grow naturally. Marquis is curious and asks about his reason for coming to the capital. At that, Kalli excitedly responds that a fighter like him would naturally come for the tournament. The Marquis pauses for a moment before stating that he has never heard of a noble personally competing in a tournament, as nobles usually send sponsored fighters to represent their honor. Without hesitation, our guy clarifies that he was a pugilist before becoming a noble, so it is more than just a competition for him. The Marquis bursts into laughter, remarking that while most nobles would have taken such a statement as an insult, he finds it refreshing. He then instructs his servants to guide him to the banquet hall, where he will introduce him to his family and associates. As they enter the hall, he observes the guests and realizes that many of them are officers of the royal guards, confirming Began's earlier claim that the Marquis treats them as his private soldiers. Began whispers the same thought into his ear. Soon after, the Marquis introduces his daughter, Nasha Eldrin, who is as beautiful as rumored. However, he immediately notices that she looks emaciated. Her face is pale. When he inquires about it, he is told that she has been sick since childhood. Looking into her eyes, he feels a strange sense of dissonance. They exchange introductions, and Nasha acknowledges his reputation as a pugilist. She then notices the scar on his nose and asks if it was from a sword. He replies that life as a slave is unpredictable and full of dangers. She further questions whether he fought his opponents with bare hands back then, to which he admits that he nearly died. Impressed, she turns to the others and announces that Baron had just once defeated a sword-wielding opponent while unarmed, asking if they would like to hear the story. He finds himself confused as several noble women suddenly surround him, eager to hear the tale. Annoyed by their interest, he explains that the noble he saved back then is now his wife. Women find it incredibly romantic while saying that she also desires a love story like that. Feeling slightly embarrassed, our guy tries to shift the conversation when a noble steps forward. The same man who had thrown a tomato at Bigan's head earlier. The noble acknowledges his story, but insists that something about it remains unclear. Instinctively, he wonders if the man is seeking revenge and offers to clarify any confusion. The noble shakes his head and says that words are not enough. Since he has spent his life handling weapons, he finds it hard to believe that someone could defeat a swordsman while unarmed. He simply states that it is the truth. The noble then proposes a reenactment, offering to use a dull practice sword for safety. He sighs, but ultimately agrees, stating that it is easier for him to explain with his fists than with words. Nasha attempts to stop them, but the Marquis intervenes, saying that this is a good opportunity. He too wants to witness firsthand what kind of pugilist Baron Adjust truly is. The man warns him that, despite it being a practice sword, a single mistake could still break his bones. Cal remains unfazed, stating that any fractures he suffers will be his own responsibility, and that his opponent should go all out. The noble women watching are stunned, their eyes fixed on him. A crowd quickly gathers eager to witness the fight, as he has only participated in a handful of official matches. Despite his fame, our guy raises his hands in a defensive stance. His opponent observes him closely, contemplating whether to use his full strength. Before he can decide, he calls him impatient. Without warning, our guy charges forward. The noble attempts to react, but a swift kick lands on his side, sending him stumbling back in pain. He protests, questioning why he used his feet, and calls our guy a coward, and our guy taunts him in return, pointing out the irony of a swordsman calling an unarmed man dishonorable. Frustrated, the noble mutters that perhaps it would only be fair if he used his fists as well. The Marquis swatches with amusement, musing that Cal must have gained real combat experience outside of official matches. His confidence is too refined to be purely theoretical, and he might even stir the stagnant waters of noble society. Determined to take the match seriously, the noble gathers himself and launches an attack. He dodges effortlessly. The noble tries again with a precise stab, but misses once more. Every move is evaded with ease. Frustration builds as exhaustion takes over. Finally, breathless and defeated, he admits his mistake. The Marquis is impressed, while Nasha watches in awe, seeing him as a man brimming with raw vitality. After that day, the Marquis frequently invites our guy while he remains in the capital. One evening, he asks if he has any formal training in swordsmanship. He replies that he never had the luxury to learn it. Laughing, the Marquis declares that noble martial arts must now acknowledge pugilism, as pugilists fight for honor rather than survival. The conversation shifts to politics. The Marquis asks if Cal has met the king yet. He replies that he has not. The Marquis smirks, explaining that the king is nothing more than a puppet. True power lies with the great lords, and the military strength is under his control. However, he admits that the king is wise enough to disperse power to maintain balance. Marquis continues that the real issue is the crown prince, who is young, arrogant, and naturally cruel. He is bound to be a disaster for the kingdom. He asks if the prince will become a tyrant. The Marquis admits that he would prefer to see the second prince on the throne, but the boy is only 5. A succession crisis will lead to civil war, with nobles fighting over bloodlines and regency rights. He warns him about an impending invitation from the crown prince and advises caution, as the prince is unpredictable. Our guy remarks sarcastically that his bad luck will somehow keep him alive. The Marquis chuckles, observing him closely. He compares him to a mercenary who lives with death always by his side, stating that he carries the scent of death. The words unsettle him, and he leaves deep in thought. As he walks through the halls, he wonders why he felt something strange when he first saw Nashia. Just before he reaches the door, Nashia stops our guy and asks if he is leaving. He confirms. She grabs his arm, questioning why he is being so formal with her, and telling him to call her Nashia, not Miss Nashia. Her request horrifies Kalli, leaving him unsure of how to respond. Nashia insists that he call her by name instead of addressing her formally. He pulls away with an irritated expression, telling her to let go. She asks about the upcoming tournament qualifiers and promises to cheer for him, adding that she will bring along more pretty girls. He welcomes her, but firmly tells her not to bring them. Laughing, she jokes about bringing handsome men instead, pretending not to know his preference. Without hesitation, he makes it clear that whatever her intentions may be, he has already vowed himself to a woman and has no interest in entertaining such jokes. He warns that this will be the last time he tolerates it. Nashia, now angered, reminds him that she is the only daughter of the Marquis, and that there is just one reason she is holding back from striking him. Before she can finish, his expression darkens and he cuts her off. It is not because of her noble status that he refrains, but because she is a woman. With nothing left to say, he turns and leaves, slamming the door behind him. At first, Nashia is stunned by his words, but then she bursts into laughter, calling him the most confident and spirited man she has ever met. She orders Blair to write something about him next. Next morning, at Boromarl Mansion, he shows Vegan the training equipment for the morning session, which is a log. After some training, Vegan, while bowing in regret, exclaims that learning pugilism was a mistake. But our boy firmly tells him that this will be his daily routine now. Vegan protests, claiming he might die from that intensity, but he dismisses his complaints, insisting that foundational strength is necessary. A blade can be refined by a skilled blacksmith, but there is no substitute for training when it comes to strengthening the body. He acknowledges that Vegan has done well so far, and Vegan finally understands. His mind drifts to his encounter with Nashia the previous day. He wonders if he was too harsh, but reminds himself that she had started bringing up Azealia, making it necessary to stop her. Shaking off the thought, he refocuses on the upcoming tournament. He informs Vegan that he will be stepping out and tells him to clean up in the meantime. When asked where he is going, he simply replies that he needs to buy leather straps and ointment. Upon arriving at the marketplace, he notices a tent that feels strangely familiar. It takes a moment before he recognizes it as a gypsy tent. Before we move ahead, please take a second to like on this video. A like tells me that you enjoyed this topic. Your support helps Amazing Pie grow naturally. The same kind where he once had his fortune told alongside Azealia in Wistery. Deciding to give it another try, he steps inside. The fortune teller welcomes him, stating that she has been expecting him and calling him a warder. The title confuses him, but she quickly clarifies that she only speaks as she sees things. If he finds it unpleasant, she offers to change her words. He tells her it is fine and asks if this place is truly meant for fortune-telling. He recalls an old woman reading his fortune and a tent just like this before. The woman confirms that their kind does not offer readings to just anyone. The old woman must have seen something in him, just as she does now. Taking his hand, she begins to speak of visions, flying hunks of metal, a human inside a box, a wagon moving without a horse. She admits that she has never seen such things before. His body tenses as he recognizes the words. These are the same visions he once heard from the old woman. He starts to wonder if gypsies truly possess divine powers. But then he remembers that he himself is a supernatural being, reincarnated as a slave in another world. The existence of mysterious abilities should not surprise him. The woman continues, sensing an unusual guardian behind him, which is a sign that his fate is significant. He disagrees, stating that he was not saved by any guardian, but by his own fists. She smiles and tells him that this is precisely why she called him a warrior. Life is a constant battle, and he too fights against hardship and adversity. She already knows that he will be joining the pugilism tournament. Surprise, he asks how she knows about that. She simply says that news reaches her. Before he leaves, she warns him to be careful, as there will be many disruptors in the tournament. As he steps out of the tent, he recalls Began's words, that the capital is the most corrupt place in the kingdom. He wonders if this means someone could bribe the referees. Shrugging off the thought, he reminds himself not to put too much faith in fortune-telling. Time passes, and the tournament qualifiers begin. A fierce match unfolds between Torres and his opponent. Torres dominates, attacking relentlessly until his opponent collapses unconscious. The referee announces Torres as the winner, securing his place in the main route. On the second day of the qualification tournament, Kalli steps into the arena. Behind him, participants are already fighting, even though the match has yet to begin. He observes the commotion, wondering why they are so impatient. Nasha arrives to watch the match, waiting for his turn. Blair accompanies her. Nasha instructs Blair to use dark magic to eliminate him, and she acknowledges the order. However, deep inside, Blair mocks her, thinking that she is foolish for believing in something like dark magic. To her, death is right in front of Nasha, but she remains unaware. Blair's true intention is to take as much money from her as possible. Once she no longer has a use for her, he plans to get rid of her without hesitation. Meanwhile, our guy quickly realizes that there are no rules or ropes in this round. The qualifying match is a chaotic brawl with 20 participants fighting at once, and only the last 3 standing will advance to the final. He has heard that competitors often gang up on famous pugilists. As the drum signals the start of the fight, our guy chooses to wait, expecting an immediate attack. However, instead of targeting him, the others begin fighting amongst themselves. His patience wears thin, frustrated that no one is coming for him. When he questions them, one of the fighters responds that no one is foolish enough to attack a noble. Annoyed, our guy demands they attack him. Another man warns that if he stays quiet now, he will only be ambushed later. His frustration reaches its peak, and he lunges forward, attacking both of them. They call him insane for not taking advantage of an easy path to the next round, but he refuses to sit still. He challenges them once more, but one opponent hesitates, suspecting that he will take revenge later if they attack him. He dismisses the thought, calling it petty. To remove all hesitation, our guy loudly declares that he will reward 10,000 guilds to anyone who defeats him. The arena erupts with excitement as the fighters rush toward him, eager for the prize. One initiates an attack, but he is ready. Before the opponent can strike, he counters with overwhelming strength, stunning the entire crowd. As more challengers rush in, Kalli taunts them, asking what they will do now that he is being petty. He counters their attacks effortlessly, dodging and striking with precision, demonstrating his skills. He tells them to watch and learn how battles are fought in the Empire. His opponents dismiss it as bluffing, claiming they have never seen such a technique before. He simply states that it is the truth. The audience murmurs among themselves. Some believe he has lost his mind, while others acknowledge his remarkable performance, realizing that the rumors about him were not exaggerated. Seeing that none of them are able to take the reward, he provokes them again. Enraged, an opponent attacks, but he resists effortlessly, countering with a powerful punch that sends the man crashing to the ground. Just then, our guy notices Nasha and Blair watching him. Nasha asks Blair for her opinion. Blair outwardly praises his life force, claiming she has never seen anyone like him before. But deep inside she is already scheming to make it appear as though dark magic worked. She plans to kill him. However, after witnessing his strength, she realizes that it is impossible. Poison becomes her only option. The fight ends with his victory, securing his place in the main round. At Ealdrin Mansion, the Marquis tells Kalli that he enjoyed watching the qualification tournament. However, he appears to be thinking something. Our guy asks him about it, and he informs him that the Crown Prince watched his match, referred to him as the dark horse of the tournament, and expressed his desire to meet him. Apologizing, he acknowledges that his earlier words have come true. He dismisses it, saying that this was bound to happen. Marquis assures him that if any issues arise, he will do his best to prevent them, but advises him to remain cautious. Later that night, at the palace of Crown Prince Crayon Larigas, Kalli arrives with Began. The prince welcomes him, while expressing gratitude for accepting the invitation. Praising his performance, he commends him for taking down filthy scoundrels. Finding his words unusually rude for a crown prince, he wonders if Crayon truly holds such a position, thinking that even Iskandar seemed more dignified in comparison. The crown prince explains that the tournament is part of his wedding celebration, and that he would be offended if a lowly man won. With that, he unsheaths his sword and swings it, stating that a noble as excellent as him should win. Observing his arrogance, our guy recalls the Marquis's words and concludes that Crayon is both foolish and lacking as a person. Crayon demands a response, and he simply states that he is determined to win. Laughing, the prince shifts his attention to Began, asking about him. He introduces Began Boromarl as his servant. Without warning, the prince slaps Began, calling him an unruly brat and ordering him to leave, saying that this is no place for someone like him. In response, our boy also announces that he is leaving, mentioning that he has dinner plans with the Marquis. Crayon acknowledges it, but warns him not to bring Began along next time. His patience snaps. Began attempts to hold him back, but without hesitation, he reveals that he was once a slave fighter with a vulgar and utterly despicable bloodline. Crayon is visibly shocked, and if you enjoyed this video, please hit the like button and subscribe to Amazing Apai. Subscribing makes sure you do not miss the next video, and it gives me motivation to keep improving the quality of every upload. Thank you for being here, and I will see you in the next one.